Welcome to the Every Gen podcast. I'm joined today in studio, as always, by Dr. Thomas. How are you, Dr. Thomas?
Good. Andy Brady, how are you?
Doing well. And as you can see, we have two guests. Arlo, Clough, how are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you.
Excellent. And then Colby Wolf. How's it going?
Excellent.
Excellent. Today, we are recapping our most recent mission trip to Brazil with Project 7. Welcome to the Every Gen podcast. Dr. Thomas, y'all just got back from Brazil a few weeks ago as the time of recording. You mentioned this in our last episode, but remind our listeners, how many years have you been going to Brazil on mission
It's been
trip?
about 15 or 16 now,
Okay.
somewhere in that realm. With COVID, in 2020, we actually did an online international mission trip. So I still include that.
That's wild.
Because we had several hundred come to Christ as we were doing everything through Zoom with the Brazilians. And so it was a legit mission trip, if you will.
That's awesome.
So about 15 or 16 years now.
Excellent. So just to involve our guests real quick, Arlo, how did you find out about this trip?
The group that was sponsoring it was at our mission banquet.
Okay. And have you done international missions before?
Yes, I've been to Honduras and also to India.
Oh, wow.
Twice
Okay.
to India.
So you're a seasoned vet in this.
Well, kind of, but this was not the typical mission.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What led you to signing up to do this? Just you heard it at the mission banquet and said, let's go?
Well,
or?
I heard it at the mission banquet, and my grandson was pushing me to go on another mission trip together.
That's awesome.
And so that was my initial motive.
Okay.
Was to let him know that there was going to be a mission trip to Brazil, and he was excited. So naturally, I got excited. I can tell you, as time drew closer to when we were going to go, I was kind of getting a little nervous about this commitment. But, as the Lord says, you have to step out and a little courage, and he'll be with us. And he was. So
that's excellent.
that was
That's
that's
excellent.
how I got there.
Amen.
And it was a great trip.
Have you experienced similar nerves with your other trips, or was this one a little bit more unique?
Oh, this was quite unique. This was quite unique. We saw more people. We saw more people come to Christ. I was on the visitation team,
Okay.
and if I had just give an overall description of this mission, I would say I'd have to refer to Henry Blackaby and Encounter with God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Truly.
Could you expand on that just a little bit if our audience isn't familiar with that?
Sure. On the visitation team, we went to various different homes that had requested a visitation. And it seemed like every time, my part, we had like 6 people on the team. We had a pastor, we had a girl that would walk everybody through the gospel itself, and then they would come to do a testimony. And every person that I met, I could relate to.
Wow.
The very first guy was recovering from cancer. I'm recovering from cancer.
Yeah.
There was a lady we met, flagged us down. She just wanted a prayer. She had just lost her son to suicide.
Wow.
I'd been through the same thing.
Yeah.
It was like God sent me.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was very powerful.
Yeah.
The whole trip was the same thing. It was just a very, very powerful experience.
Wow.
Now, Arlo, you're in your mid-40s now, right?
Yes. Upper mid-40s.
Upper mid-40s. If you're listening and not watching today, Arlo is in his upper mid-40s times, and became, one of the things I so appreciated about you, Arlo, on this trip. First of all, your heart for Christ and your passion to share the gospel with people, but just your resilience at your age to go and to do an international mission trip. Andy, there were times, and Colby, you were up in the mix with him as well, where Arlo was in the mosh pit at the end of worship, and they would have all this Brazilian music, and I'm looking for all the seasoned veterans, meaning the older people, including myself on the trip, who were ready just to go back and go to bed. And I'm like, where is Arlo? And then he's up with all the 20-year-olds jumping to all the worship stuff up front. And I was just like, oh, wow, look at that. Okay, I can't leave yet, or I'll be shamed.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome. So a little encouragement for others as well.
I have to say that everybody on the trip, the Brazilians and the Americans, all treated me with a great deal of respect for my age. If
Amen.
there was always somebody looking after me, do you need a bottle of water? Do you need a place to sit or whatever? And it was just really a great experience. That's one of the things I was concerned about, whether I should go or not.
Really?
Because of my age and my health and everything else, I was a little concerned about that.
And how old are you now, Arlo?
81, I'll be 82 next month.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
Praise God.
Yeah.
Just that's
Great
what a
experience.
testimony.
Yeah.
Thank you. Colby, how did you, for those that don't know, what ministries are you part of here at Northside?
So I'm part of the college ministry here.
Okay.
I grew up in Windthorst, Texas, and then I moved here for my freshman year of college. Yeah, and then been here for 3 years, and it's going on junior year organizational leadership program. So yeah, and
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What is this have you ever gone on an international mission trip before this?
I've not. No.
Okay.
No.
So then tell us how you ended up signing up for this. And
Let me ask you this: had you ever been out of the country before?
Yes, once.
Okay.
I went to Mexico, but that was purely
Non-mission.
Not
senior
mission
trip.
trip.
Yeah, definitely not a mission.
I went
We
to
won't go into
not
the
mission
details.
trip.
I went to
Sorry.
not mission trip international.
That's fair.
Oh man, went to Mexico, but only saw Americans. You know,
Yeah.
it's kind of weird. But yeah, so I heard about it. It was preached. I guess it was called the Mission Banquet when they talked about it, and I was like, I want to go sit in on that because I think it'd be really cool to go international and mission trip and all that stuff. And so I sat in, and I'm looking at the piece of paper that they gave us, and it says the price, and I'm like, well, that was a good dream. I guess I'll,
That was a
sit
neat
out
thought.
Yeah, I guess I'll sit out on this one. And then yeah, time went on, and so I went to that banquet, and I texted my friend Anthony. I was like, hey, like we should go to Brazil, and he was like, all right, how much? And I was like, maybe next year. And so, but you know, time went on, and then Anthony met with Jim, and we. And you might remember this more because I was there, but like you pitched it to him and like how there was 2 free scholarships available.
Yeah, what happened one Sunday after church, a lady came up, and we'll keep her anonymous at this point, but a lady came up to Pastor Brad, our worship pastor, and said, I would really love to go on the international mission trip, but I'm just unable to, but I'm willing. She said, how much is it? And he told her, and she said, well, I'm willing to fund 2 people to go.
That was great.
And then I was meeting with Anthony in a disciple making relationship, and then he and Colby had started talking, and that's kind of where the story melds. And I said, well, we just happened to last Sunday, per the conversation I was having with Anthony, have 2 free scholarships. Will you 2 guys pray about it? And I think they said, yeah, we'll pray about it. We're in. I think that's kind of how it went from there.
He texted me. I was like, you know what? I'm going to accept before I say no. So, but I mean, it's just an opportunity like that. I definitely can't pass up. I'm young. I'm inexperienced. You know, I'm looking for just kind of that, you know, international mission trip you hear about. It changes people's lives. And so it's like, I'm all in for that. God, am I available? And I looked, and I don't plan that far ahead, so I was available. And, you know.
He's a college student.
Yeah.
It's the beauty of flying by the seat of your pants and winging it. Is
Which
you don't-
works really well in Brazil, by the way.
Hey, sounds like my kind of people. And on the run up to the trip, you know, Arlo shared that there was a little bit of anxiousness about it, a little bit of nerves on his end, and he was a seasoned vet. This being your first international mission trip, was it just, hey, this is going to be awesome and everything's peachy, or did we have a little bit of nerves, a little bit of anxiousness, a little bit of second guessing?
Yeah, it was pretty peachy, and then I was like, I don't even know what time I fly, and it's we leave in 2 days, and so and because people were asking me, and so the only nerve was just kind of how people perceived me, like in my family and stuff, and or in my friends, and so like it's like that was the only anxious part, just the.
And you're referring to back home, just
Back at
people that
home.
aren't here with you every day, seeing
Yeah.
how God's working on a daily basis.
Exactly. And
Okay.
so, but really personally for me, I was ready. I was just like, let's go. I'm very outgoing. That's what I love. I love to just do stuff, just whatever. And so I was super excited. And then I got nervous, excited, but it was never like I need to back out. I might have had that thought once, and I shut it down quickly because I didn't want to think that, and I was so ready. But yeah,
That's incredible.
It's usually customs, getting through customs.
Oh,
Yeah.
and it's the language barrier
Yeah.
that makes people the most nervous.
Yeah.
And once those are handled, we get into Brazil. It's really easy to get in and out of Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start meeting, especially Brazilian teenagers and college students who are bilingual, and you're like, oh, I'm going to be okay. They're not going to leave me anywhere.
That's awesome.
Where I have to try to navigate this. Of course, Google Translate sure does help a lot, doesn't
Definitely. Yeah.
it? And even to where you can show words to someone or actually, allow the.
And there was a lot of that going on in that, especially in that age group. They were
bet.
going back and forth with
Yeah.
they were making great fun out of trying to learn each other's languages.
It was. I think it's called flirting.
Yeah, well, it was. There's a lot of that going on too.
It happens. So Arlo, you were on the visitation team. Colby, what team were you
I was
on?
on lecture team. Yeah.
Okay, what y'all lecture about?
So there was 3 kinds of lectures. It was choices and consequences, sex ed, and screen time, phone time management,
Technology.
technology, all that. And so at the beginning, I was on the technology, how to be safe online side of things. And then as things started getting more, let's say, like, I don't know, how would you word that? Just on the fly.
Okay.
Yeah. I was
Reorganized.
Reorganized.
In the
Yes.
spirit.
Yeah.
Yes,
If,
absolutely.
Some of us that operate that way can church it up a little.
So I ended up being a part of all 3, and
that's
just
cool.
wherever I'm called to be. It was a big flexible moment, and I loved it. I loved being able to be like, okay, what team needs me? What team doesn't need me? You know. So like, yeah.
That's awesome. How would the teams operate? Where would y'all go? Who would y'all talk to?
Yeah.
Just go find a market and just talk to strangers that are trying to buy groceries for the day. Like what? How would
It's
it roll?
so they kind of made sure we had a translator, obviously. Had one Brazilian, and the Americans kind of like in different. We don't want all the Americans in one lecture team. They wanted them spread out, and so and then a musician as well. And so we came to the schools. We introduced ourselves, and then played a couple of songs, talked about the what we're lecturing over, and then gave a personal testimony. And so that was kind of my role in the whole thing, was sharing my testimony in an age appropriate way, because we had
Depending on the school, right?
depending on the school.
Yeah.
We had elementary kids to middle school kids to high schoolers, and to people that are older than me. Like it was a night class. I don't know how to explain that, but yeah,
Kind of a continuing ed type thing.
Yeah.
In one of the high schools that they allowed adults to come to as well.
That's
Cool.
incredible.
Yeah.
Arlo, where were your visitation teams going? Were they going to the same schools that?
No,
Colby's
no,
teams
we
were?
didn't. We didn't go to schools. What was basically happening was the evangelism team was going around talking to people during the day, and they would feed us the information. They have a piece of paper that they filled out. So that's actually the form is very useful, because they can track how many people accept the Lord and everything else. But we would get those in the morning, and they would get them from when we had a worship service at night. They'd go around and get them. And I think there might have been some pre-work that was done before we got there to gather. And we would have, I don't know how many visitation teams there was. I think there was like at least 3 or 4. And we would get an average of 8 visitations during the day.
Okay.
And sometimes we would only be able to find 6, because their address would be Brazil. and that's a little bit of a challenge. Even though we had a girl that was specializing in doing that, that was a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
But we were in the first place the mountains were 100 miles high, it seemed like, and there was places all the way around that we went all up in the hills and all of that stuff. But into people's homes. One guy actually received the Lord, and he was in a bar.
Oh wow.
His family owned a bar,
Mhm.
and we went in, and the older guy was sitting there, and he was cheering anything on. And the 2 boys were standing there, and they actually accepted the Lord. So we didn't care where we went. We just wanted to go where the people were, and that was basically how it went. Every day, if we got more from the night worship, we'd have more every single day and do that.
It's almost like a follow-up
Yeah,
ministry.
they it's both and. It's pastoral care, it's follow-up, it's evangelism, it's kind of everything, but it's more, the visitation team is more intentional, whereas we call the evangelism team the Marines. We just say, go get them.
Yeah.
And they hit the streets and they talk to anybody who moves.
Yeah.
And they were actually going to specific places to talk to people. And the Lord would open up opportunities for them that weren't scheduled, obviously.
Yeah.
But like he said, with the lady who was grieving, that's a pastoral care moment.
Yeah.
With I think one of our visitation teams went into a nursing facility one day. And so there have been times when they've gone into businesses because the owner's a believer and he wanted someone to share the gospel with his employees or whatever that looks like. So more timed visits. So they're evangelism, but they're kind of timed evangelism, if you will.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They was one occasion where we did a visitation, and they had written on the form medical. When we got there, the lady was having a real history of heart problems. I mean, her legs were swollen up like this. And we went back to the center and got somebody from the medical team. And the nurse, I'm sure what I know which, the one I'm talking about. She came down there, she had her kit, and she went through everything and consoled her and, gave us some recommendations and stuff like that. And her husband accepted the Lord.
Amen.
Wow.
So it was, everything just seemed to come together, and different things would happen. It was like God was in charge.
Yeah.
Really.
That's my faith gets so bolstered by the moments of, I think, where we get clarity of like, God has been doing all of this, and he just dropped me in for this one window. And if I'll be faithful, I get to be on the field when God does what he does.
Yeah.
And if I'm not faithful, I miss out. God's still doing his work. And, there would have been other people on the team, but you got to be there, borrowing from the Bible in such a time as this, where it was the specific people that you've met with.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Well, and the idea of Project
generous
70
God.
being Jesus sending out the 70,
Yeah.
72 in one of the other Gospels, the idea of just obedience and going and not knowing, right, what you're going to run into.
Right.
Because we ran into some pretty significant roadblocks in the schools in the second city to where we had to go sit in a mayor's office. And I shared this one Sunday morning here after we got back, but we had to basically ask permission to get into the schools because all the schools were closed down to us in that city, which has never been the case. And God worked in that. He opened the schools to us. And then we had, I think that morning, I think there was one team that had one school. And then after we had that mayor's meeting, I had like 3 or 4 that afternoon, 6 the next day. I mean, it was the floodgates.
Goodness.
You're like, we're going to like our 3rd or 4th school. We're going, okay, we asked for this.
So we got to go do it.
We got to go do it now.
We committed.
And, after you do 20 or 25 schools over the course of a project, you're kind of going, okay, we could probably skip the last one. And in fact, Pastor Brad and I were talking about that. We were both worn out, and we're just like, oh man, just to have the last part of the afternoon off before the last evening service. And then we said, no, but this is what God called us to do.
Yeah.
And for both of us, those 2 last schools were the sweetest experience we had through the whole trip.
Funny how often that happens.
Isn't it?
Right. The one that you can easily justify skipping out on the most.
Yeah.
Is the one that
Is one God uses in a big way.
Yeah.
And so Colby mentioned flexibility. I think just stepping where the Spirit steps, being obedient where he leads us, to be willing to say, I'm going to share my testimony here. Or there was one instance where I was like, you know what, this isn't, like we had younger kids, like really younger kids. And I'm like, we need to pivot here and bring in the VBS team and not do a lecture on choices and consequences because we're going to lose these kids in the first 5 minutes. And they came in and did the VBS and all these motions and object lessons, and they dressed up some of the Brazilians in superhero costumes and did a play, and they were engaged the whole time. So, to get rid of yourself and your ability to lead in that situation, to say, okay, I don't have to be the speaker here. I don't have to give my testimony here. I'm going to let someone come else and use their gifts, and I'm going to support them. Is really a picture of the church.
Absolutely.
And I think the other thing for me, Andy, is, and I want to hear what these guys have to say about it, is just the receptivity of people to the gospel. I think people
incredible.
in the U.S. think that no one's open to the gospel anymore. And my experience over this last decade and a half of going to Brazil is a reminder that God's still at work in the world, and that people's hearts are pliable and they're open to hear the truth
Yeah.
about salvation.
Yeah.
Would y'all agree with that?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely.
there's a verse that kept hitting my mind, and was Revelation 12:11. By the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimonies, they shall defeat the evil one.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
and they love not their lives even unto death. And I memorized that because the unto death part, and I was 18, and I thought unto death was really cool.
Really cool. And awesome. As long as it doesn't happen to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I kind of forgot about that verse until I was there, and I was like, oh my goodness, we're sharing the gospel, we're sharing the blood of the Lamb, by the blood of the Lamb, by what Jesus did. We're sharing the gospel, and we're also sharing our testimonies. By the blood of the Lamb, and by the word of their testimonies, they will defeat the evil one. And so it's something that, like, oh, America's so lost, blah, 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 blah. But I think something that I've learned and I've come to take away is, like, we're not sharing the gospel. I know I'm not. And so when you go to a place and you're sharing actually sharing the gospel and taking that literal, and it's like, oh, I invited them to church the other day, and it's like, is that the gospel though? Like, and so that was so big, and I was like, I don't have to, like, I don't believe I'm called to overseas missions, but I believe I was called to that one, so I could come here and take what I've learned over there and bring
It here,
Amen.
bring it back here and share it with people. Sure.
Yeah.
There was something you just mentioned that I'm not quite sure if this is where you were going, but in sharing the gospel, we're talking about a relationship with Jesus. We're not talking about the Catholic Church or the Baptist Church or any other church. And that was really important there because a good percent of those people said they were Catholic.
Right.
Whether they were practicing or they weren't. But they were very anxious to accept Jesus as Jesus. And I thought that was a big part of that mission, was to do that.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Between what both of y'all said, I'm reminded of a study that came out, I believe it was 3 years ago. Both Pew, Barna, and Lifeway, all three released studies within a small window of time. But ultimately, one of the things that came from this study was over 61% of Americans say that they are willing and wanting to hear about God and a relationship with God, knowing that's
Very generic.
probably
but
more
yeah,
generic spiritual,
Yeah,
if it is from a friend,
That's right.
yeah.
which is what's wild. So being my experience over limited overseas missions experiences, almost like Paul having that card of, hey, I'm Roman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like getting to be,
Or,
hey,
I'm Jewish.
yeah.
You know,
Like
either one, whichever works.
getting to be, hey, I'm American. There are places that certainly opens doors,
Yes.
which certainly let y'all go in. But
Yeah.
Colby, kind of what you're saying, 61% of adults are saying, if we have a relationship, I want to know what drives your bus.
Yeah.
But you got to tell them. Like,
Yeah.
and you know, it's if over half of Americans don't share their faith, I mean, we're just leaving so much meat on the bone.
We really are.
Anyway, sorry.
I just came to mind, go back to the guy that was at the bar. And we were talking to him, and after he accepted Christ, I had the opportunity to actually lead him to that. That's why that one kind of sticks in my mind. And after he accepted the Lord, I put my arms around and say, now you got lots of cousins and brothers in Texas.
That's right.
Sir. Yes,
Watch
sir.
out, he may show up on your doorstep. But
Yeah.
That's fair. What about in the evenings or at night? So you were in the schools, y'all were visiting, doing follow-up pastoral care. Y'all are out. What did the trip consist of in the evenings or at night? Was it all downtime? Was it
No.
let's go off into the forest or into the ocean and have
No.
funtivity? What do we do?
there's a little funtivity on this trip. We work about 14-hour days.
Yeah.
And there's a few breaks once you're done with the school or whatever, where you
Yeah.
can kind of breathe again, go get you an acai or a cup of coffee and kind of re-energize till you do your next thing. But no, the evenings were basically everything that happened in the day culminated in the evening service.
Okay.
And as long as it was in drivable or walkable range, we would invite people to come to the evening service, which is usually planted somewhere in the middle of the main city we're in. Now, this year was a little different. We were driving anywhere from 30 to 60 kilometers outside the main city, a couple hours at a time, to go in the afternoons to these other small towns and do 2 or 3 hours of work, and then we turn around and come back. But the night culminates in our whole team and the invitation for the whole city to join us in a worship service. So we would have 600 people
Yeah.
at these worship services,
Wow.
if not more.
Easy 600.
Yeah. And band plays. We'll do some American music with the American musicians. Johnny Cash showed up. John Denver showed up once, I think. The Americans formed a choir, and we sang My Jesus by Ann Wilson.
Okay.
And we did, I think, a Chris Tomlin. What did we do? Holy Forever.
Holy Forever, yeah.
Holy Forever as a choir. Pastor Brad led us in that with the band playing for us. And so, we start singing and every phone in the place goes up,
Yeah.
starting to record
wow.
us. And then the worship band actually leads in a set of worship, and then one of our pastors would preach and draw the net and give an invitation at the end. So it's about a 2.5 hour service, not including the after party,
Right.
which is a bunch of traditional Brazilian
music and
dancing
yeah.
and all that
That's awesome.
stuff. That's when the old people kind of fall
Fade
to the
back.
other than Arlo, fall to the back and go get
Not
pizza.
every night, but
Yeah, go
a
get
few.
pizza or go to sleep. One of the
Yeah,
two, and all the
yeah,
kids end up dancing
That's
half
awesome.
the night. But
in
yeah,
my mind right now is just like a great German wedding.
that's kind of
Yeah.
Just and having had one of those receptions myself,
Yeah.
like that's what's in my mind. Just a lot
It's
of fun
kind of
right
that,
now.
it's obviously it's not Hispanic culture because they're Portuguese in background, but it's a very Latin culture.
Yeah.
And so music, dancing, expression
Yeah.
is part of that culture.
Yeah.
And the accordion gets pulled out and whoompa whoompa, we start having a good time.
Yeah.
It's a cross-cultural instrument, man.
It is.
We can-
It is.
We can
It
have a good
is.
time with that. We can two-step with it, and we can cumbia. Just kind of before we wrap it up, what are maybe some lessons or takeaways that you feel like either God showed you there, or He's been kind of firming within your heart and your mind since you've been back from this trip?
What I have in my mind is I just want to share this experience with more people and see what we can do to. I mean, I see the possibility, and maybe I'm a dreamer, I don't know, of doing something like this in some of our smaller cities and stuff. I mean, even Boston, I know they're going to do one up there, but there's two churches up there. One of them is a Brazilian or Portuguese community, but the other one's Italian.
Right.
Boy, those guys really get whooped up.
Yeah.
And it's
And
a
they
very
can
small
cook.
town. It's a very small town.
Right.
But there's other places where we could, get that something like that going, because how many people did we see come to the altar every night?
That's right. Yeah.
Incredible.
It's incredible.
Absolutely incredible.
Well, and for those of you listening and watching, Arlo grew up in Cape Cod,
Right.
off the tip of Massachusetts, and how amazing God is to draw histories and cultures together. As one of the pastors who came down on the trip
Yeah.
is a Brazilian pastor from Boston.
Yeah.
And so Project
That's cool.
70 is going to do their first Boston trip in October of this year. And I don't know if any of our folks are going or not yet, but so you see already a coming together of cultures, mindsets, brothers and sisters from different areas to be able to actually bring some of this to the United States. So, Arlo sat down with me one day. He kind of scared me because I thought he was going to share the gospel with me. But we got knee to knee, and he goes, "How do we bring this back to Weatherford?
Yeah.
Mhm.
How do we bring this back to Parker County?
Yeah.
How do we mobilize people to have a passion for the gospel
Mhm.
that we don't see in the States right now?" And I looked at him and go, and here was my brilliant theological answer: I don't know.
Yeah.
But it starts with us, what Colby was saying
Right.
a minute ago, living out the truth of the gospel every day where
Yeah.
we are.
Yeah.
And then as leaders and pastors in our church, to start to challenge our people toward that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then here's the energy behind it all. Here's the adrenaline rush is when you see God start to move and lives changed. You're like, I'm in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yep.
Mhm.
I don't have to question this anymore. I don't have to have that fear anymore. God's moving.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
And
awesome.
it's such a hesitancy when you say, "Oh yeah, we need to share the gospel," and everyone listening and me, and it's like, "Oh yeah, let's do it." And then we get out there, and it's like, "This is scary," and it's not. And so it's. I mean, for me in my generation, like you kind of what I think the difference on Brazil and here is Brazil. We had over like 300 people, 400 people just sharing the gospel, so you don't feel alone.
Right.
And here you might feel alone with what the media pushes, what everybody pushes, and so you're like, well, I can't do this. I don't want to be offensive. I don't want to be all that. And so it's like it's really hard. You have that tendency of not wanting to share it, but it's a real satanic thought, I think, and and that's the saving power, is the gospel. And that's something I've taken back from Brazil, is that. And then also kind of a thought to, I remember waking up and I'm walking out for breakfast and no one's outside, and it's just kind of just me, and I'm looking at this breakfast table and I hear God just say, slow down. And I'm like, what? Like, why? And so, and I'm looking at that, and then throughout the day I'm seeing just like, someone was talking about how there was a 60-year-old without gray hair, or like things that are insignificant. But now I realize, oh, there's such a fast pace of life that I'm starting to be accumulated in, and starting to be roped up in, and like the business side of all of everything, and just, we got to go. We have to make sure of it. And so, like, he's just saying, slow down. Like, you're young. Like, you're just, don't be so wrapped up in the worldly, and
Pay attention to what's going on.
and pay attention. And so that's kind of what I brought back, is just, hey, I need to slow down. I need to take it easy. I need to roll my shoulders back and take a deep breath and say, it's not that big of a deal. Like, whatever it is, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Well, and the evangelism thing too, I mean, especially with Colby, but with all of us, if you know of a student, say you met a student at school, and they're not a believer, and man, you just sense God leading to share the gospel, get someone to go with you. And grab an Anthony, or grab someone on our team, or another one of college students at Northside, and say, hey, would you go with me? I'm not going to ask you to do anything. I just need you to go with me. And I really feel led to share the gospel with this person. And that does two things. First of all, in me, it breeds confidence. Secondly, it provides accountability. That I'm not going to back out, that I'm not going to be generic, that I'm actually going to talk about Jesus.
Right.
Yeah.
And because even Arlo, I think even on visitation, even though you're a bold witness for Christ, having those other people on the team around you that you really didn't know well,
Absolutely.
held you accountable to do what you were called to do.
Everybody had a function. Everybody was doing what they were supposed to be doing, because we worked as a team. Absolutely. It was much, I mean, we would talk to because they're speaking Portuguese, so I'm kind of sitting back waiting, but the pastor would talk to the person, or one of the girls would talk to the person, and kind of get what we were there for. And then the pastor would talk to them for a minute. Then they'd turn to me and say, would you like to give your testimony? I give my testimony. And then one of the girl would take it with a cube. She'd go through the gospel with a cube. And that was I think that's a good thing, because they get a visual of you as you're going through it, and but everybody, and then she would ask them if they were ready to accept Christ. And then somebody on the team would lead them through accepting Christ, and make sure that they actually said the words, make sure
Understood
you
what they were doing.
I'm going to tell you, but you need to repeat the words, because it has to be from you. Only you and Jesus can do this together, not me.
That's right.
Not the church, not anybody else, just you and them. So, but
That's great.
It worked out great.
I'm hearing from all three of you, one of my favorite things about people laying down their day-to-day life to go follow God and what he's inviting them to do. In y'all's case, it's an international mission trip this time. It's other mission trips. Fill in the blank for trip and big event. We try to, I feel like over the course of this podcast, be diligent of exposing maybe false barriers that the enemy puts up. I think one of the misconceptions, and Colby talking about lies from Satan, is, oh, you three guys are on fire. And y'all are loving it because y'all are mission people. Like, even though this was your first one, you've been going a while. You've been going a while, not too long. It's still young, vibrant. You're welcome, boss. But like, I think there's a misconception that, oh, y'all say, let's go talk to people. Let's go share the gospel because y'all are paid by the church, as Dr. Thomas and myself, or y'all did this mission trip. That's for them. What I would love for people to realize is this is the exact same invitation, and you never will have an understanding of tasting and seeing that the Lord is good until you have tasted by doing what he's inviting you to do today.
And that's for every believer.
Like you sharing with students on campus, you sharing with the people you come across, us sharing with neighbors, and I mean, we don't really share with coworkers like I used to.
There's a few that probably need it.
But I've been in the marketplace on a full-time basis, like, to the extent that my company's policy will allow, sharing the gospel with them.
Mhm.
having a chance to step out and let Jesus prove himself faithful
Mhm.
and give you a glimpse into what he's doing
Mhm.
can give us this same passion and re-energizing as though we had just come back from a mission trip,
Yeah.
just to see the way God's working here. And I guess that's what I would want. Maybe that listener right now that might have dismissed some things
Mhm.
because, they're missions people.
Well, and what
Um,
Arlo said is critical, Andy. I think the idea that we were all working as a team,
Absolutely.
and there was 409 people working as a team, doesn't mean everybody pulled their weight all the time. I could
Yeah.
probably be accused of that myself at
Yeah.
certain moments in those 10 days that we were on the field. But what if the 1,500 people that were here Sunday at Northside
Absolutely.
were all doing what God had called them to do?
Mhm.
How would that change Parker County,
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Dallas Fort Worth?
Yeah.
What if all the churches started doing everything Jesus asked us to do
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
and didn't say, well, that's for the mission people, or that's for the professional Christians that we pay, but every Christ follower being a missionary
Yeah.
wherever they are in their context. And then we mobilized them to do the work of the gospel together.
Yeah. And once you get a taste of what God has done through somebody else, and you're just the vessel,
Mhm.
then it kind of changes. It pretty much changes everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I was over at Brazil, it hit me the last night, and there was a little boy that I was friends with, and I just taught him how to throw a football.
American
A
football.
real
American,
football.
a real
real
We
football.
can just call it football.
He taught you how to kick a
Yeah.
soccer
We
ball.
can
Yeah.
we can call
Yeah.
it football because that's real
It's
football.
real football, exactly.
I
And
have to
they
say
all
real
thought I was
table. It's just table.
they all thought I was American, pro-American football player, by the way, and I said yes.
Yes, I am.
No, I didn't.
Let me tell you
You'd like
about
to
those
buy a jersey?
Windthorst Trojans.
Oh yeah,
State champions 2021?
2020.
Yeah.
Yeah,
2020.
but
Is
Oh,
anybody
state
playing
champions.
football?
yeah.
The Windthorst Trojans were.
Anyways, rabbit trail. Sorry.
But he the last night he comes up and he's and all, if you just see it, all the kids are talking and playing and they're not listening to anything the preacher man's saying. And so, but he comes up and he's sitting next to me, and he is antsy and he's looking around and he's trying to get my attention. I'm just like praying for him, and I'm just like, please pay attention or whatever, mostly for the sake of him and for the sake of being saved to Jesus. And so and then he just was paying attention with me, and it was a really beautiful moment. And then he stood up and they did the invitation, and I'm just praying for this little boy, and he starts walking up, and I'm just like almost crying because it's a beautiful relationship that I made with him. And then seeing that he is saved to eternity
Mhm.
with Jesus forever.
Yeah.
I mean, I looked that word up, and
Yeah.
it's
Wait,
What
you
does it
heard
mean,
that
Colby?
before.
a long
quoted
time.
you.
Oh man.
That was a good one. I had a different ending, but that may be the ending. That's good. That's
Yeah,
good.
and
Thank you for
You
sharing.
know, people can start at home. They don't have to go on
That's
mission.
right.
No,
Each
they
one of
don't.
them has somebody in their family that
Mhm.
doesn't know the
And we
Lord.
should. That's right.
Absolutely.
It's a great opportunity to share it. And, my granddaughter brought me to Christ.
That's right.
70
right.
years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
My 15-year-old granddaughter brought me to Christ.
Yeah.
Wow.
She told
Praise
me
God.
that her and her brother had been baptized, and they had been saved by the Lord, and they didn't want to go to heaven alone.
Mm.
Wow.
Mm.
Wow. Praise God.
Changed my life.
Yes, it did.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Absolutely. I don't think there's anything better to end on.
That's it, man.
I would say this: if you have questions and you're about maybe going on Project 70 or even just some advice on evangelizing, these three guys just spent a few weeks practicing it. Maybe there's somebody that you would like us to pray for in your life. Turn your phone sideways so you can see the video of this for a moment, then put it back down to where you can't. But you recognize any of us in the hallways, man, just come say hi and ask for a prayer and a time with them. That's it this time on the Every Gym podcast. Please make sure to subscribe and review us wherever you get your podcast. Thank you.